A Us Lesbians production. So I was looking at an old college photo of myself from the early 2000s back in the Philippines. A time and a place where living an alternative lifestyle was a big no-no. I was a young lesbian who didn't know any other lesbians. I had no clue how I was going to get through life living that way, but I kept on living anyway. Here I am now, 20 years later, with a lesbian crew of my own, living freely and loving every minute of it. I didn't have any lesbian influences growing up, and this is the primary ingredient of the Taco Stand podcast. You're listening to a podcast produced and powered by lesbians, and you're about to hear their incredible lives. This is what the Taco Stand podcast is about. The Taco Stand podcast welcomes Jackie Bowers. She hails from Kansas City, Missouri, and served in the United States Air Force for over 3 decades and held a variety of positions in procurement, acquisitions, and systems. She retired as a lieutenant colonel in 2015. Her goal for Us Lesbians, also known as Jewel, is to be the benchmark for lesbian community across the country. Jackie Bowers, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Angelli. I appreciate it.
So, when I was first thinking about this podcast, there was no one else I can think of as the first person to guest the show because, one, this wouldn't happen if not for Us Lesbians, and two, this wouldn't happen if not for you. So there's no one else I had in mind to guest on the show but you, first and foremost. So thank you for coming on board. Thank you for taking the time and being the first one out of our very many guests. And we're delighted that we're finally getting this show on the road and delighted to have you on as our very first inspiring lesbian woman who we would all hear about and talk about for ages to come, I'm sure.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, everything you said and all the kind words. I do this because I believe in it. It makes me happy, and I know it makes the lesbians happy coming together, having a community. And I really appreciate all the support you and all the members of our group have given. We all know it doesn't happen by just one person. It takes all of us. So thank you.
And you're very welcome. I know that it's a lot of work to do what you do. And we'll get to the portion about Us Lesbians because that's a very big part of the reason why we have this podcast. And most of the ladies that are going to come as the guests on the show would be mostly coming from the group Us Lesbians. So to our audience and to our listeners, you'll definitely hear more about the Us Lesbians here pretty soon. But for now, what I wanted to get to is anything and everything basically about Jackie Bowers. So spill the beans, right? Like that's what's gonna be the show is gonna be like. So I think for most queer community and most lesbians out there, the first thing usually that you want to ask about the lesbian that you're with, or if you're out on a date, the first thing you ask about right away is, what's your coming out story? So that's the first question I think about. So what is your coming out story, Jackie? Like, when did you first know that you're a lesbian?
Okay, I can tell you from the time I was a very, very young girl, I knew that I had an attraction to women, and I'm talking like elementary school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely had some crushes on some girls in the class with me, but of course, you kept them to yourself, and I didn't know what that was at that time.
Yeah. So what was that like? Because if you don't mind me saying, you're 59 right now, right? So that means that you were kind of figuring out yourself like as early as you said, as you were a kid. So
I'd probably say around 7, 8 years old.
yeah. So
It was like probably early 70s.
so what was that like? Like not even knowing what a lesbian is, right? So you just grew up thinking you're a little bit different. You didn't quite know who you are.
Yeah, I would say not really sure. I knew there was a strong attraction to females, and
Yeah.
I definitely had my little crushes, and carried on with that in my mind only, of course.
Right.
But, never acted on any of it, until later, because, it's just something that wasn't talked about, really didn't know much about it at the time.
Yeah. So when did you actually first acted on it? So you were thinking about it when you were young, and then when did you actually fully realized this is a thing and this is who I am?
Well, I think I always knew, but it wasn't until I got my first girlfriend, which is in the early 80s. I was 16. We met. We were in high school. It happened one night. And it also happened in a very uncompromising situation with me, where my mom walked in and caught me and the girlfriend in a position that we're not going to talk about.
Okay. Oh my gosh. So you were just sort of friends with her, and then you guys started developing feelings for each other?
Yes, the friendship was there. And of course, how they say, like with the U-Haul, well, it moved fast, the relationship.
So do you still do you still have contact with this girl or no?
No, it's been decades since we've communicated.
Yeah. So that happened, and then that's how your mom found out that, oh, she's gay, or she's a lesbian, whatever. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, again, she walked in on this, situation that was occurring between two females, which, is something you don't really talk about or or really happen in that time frame. And I grew up in a very, very smaller Hispanic community, and I think my mom was in shock and disbelief that she had to pretty much tell everybody and their brother so they knew. And it was tough. And I ended up moving out the next week because I felt a lot of shame, embarrassment. It wasn't something I could really deny that it occurred, because it did. And of course my mom had credibility, so
right. So after that, then it was awkward, and it wasn't accepted. Basically, in the 80s, it wasn't as obviously as how it is now. There's visibility. Everyone's welcoming, sort of, depends on where you're at. So how did that evolve, I guess, over time?
During the time when this happened, I want to say it was in 82, 83 when this occurred. You got to remember that AIDS was starting to really, the attention on AIDS and all the deaths, the sicknesses, and, this disease that's popping up in the actual gay male community. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of fear, a lot of misunderstanding. Of course, who knew what was really going on with it? And so basically, it was one of them things that, to me, it was a shameful thing, because it was a disease that was killing people. And, here I am acting, doing my part in the lesbian community with my first girlfriend. And so it was tough. Moved out the next week and just kind of moved on from my family and just, carried on with my girlfriend for a few more years. And that was it.
Wow. So that essentially catapulted you to go into the military. Is that what happened? So, because you first felt you weren't accepted then by the family, by your mom or your dad.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I grew up, like I said, in a smaller Hispanic community, but we were also Catholic and
Right.
Catholic school, the social pressures, all of it.
Yeah.
And, there wasn't a wide acceptance, of course, at that time. So, yeah, I always knew I wanted to join the military. I knew since I was like 14 years old.
Yeah.
And, I was fortunate that I was able to get there and to join. Definitely some hard knocks along the way that could have prevented it. But, the good Lord and, the efforts I put forth, allowed me to go into the military and serve my country, whether I'm gay or not.
Yeah.
And just to do my part. And, I was able to retire, and it was a very rewarding, great experience.
Yeah. You served for 20 plus years, right, in the Air Force?
I served for 30.
30. Wow. So this was around the time, so you left home, joined the military, and for the entire time that you were there, you were essentially a lesbian, right? So is that like around the time of Don't Ask, Don't Tell? What was that like?
I can't remember the actual date for Don't Ask, Don't Tell when that came about, but I always know that, that was one of the initial questions on the questionnaire to join the military about homosexuality. And so anybody who joined that was a homosexual knew that was, against the rules. You'll get kicked out, court-martialed, in trouble. There was a lot of witch hunts, definitely a lot of judgment. And frankly, it was just against the rules at that time while serving in the military. With that, I think a lot of the gays that have came before me and even serving now, not so much now because it's more accepted, but we know how to probably camouflage maybe our lifestyles, because there's probably people out there that don't want it known now because of whatever their positions,
right.
And they don't want to be scrutinized or singled out. So
yeah, no, I get that. And being someone who's gay myself and a lesbian, it's hard when you've finally embraced who you are as a lesbian or as gay or queer, and as you come out, it's almost like that's the only thing about you, that you're not known for anything else. You could be this wonderful human being, you could be a pastor at the same time, or you could be this and you could be that, and all you're ever going to be known for is a lesbian woman. And so I understand why some people prefer not to out themselves, because they want to be known for something else too. You're not just that, right? So 30 years in the military, in the Air Force, you've served quite a bit. And we've talked about this, and personally that, you've basically dedicated your life to the military. And then now that you're gone, and done and did your duty, you're pretty much essentially living the life now, right? Somewhat living it up.
Right. Well, I have to say, yeah, I'm living a pretty good life right now, and I'm pretty happy. And, I'm amongst excellent lesbians in the community of San Antonio, a lot of great friendships, and just a lot of different social activities to come together and really to unite lesbians in a healthy and safe place in San Antonio by enriching our lives and really warding off, things like depression, loneliness, because, when you spend a lot of time alone because you feel like you don't got a community, especially, being gay, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to even, make friends in general, whether you're straight or gay, especially as you get older.
Right.
So where do you go and find that?
Yeah.
And so this is the beauty of Just Us Lesbians. And it's definitely given me, what I've been looking for in life. And that's why I'm really happy to do it. I try to put my all into it.
Yes, you have.
And it's, definitely extremely rewarding and, personally, has impacted me in a positive manner regarding my mental health.
Yes.
And so I really appreciate where we're at.
So so after the military, after you retired, you basically situated yourself here in San Antonio. This is where how long have you lived here in San Antonio?
I retired in 2015 from the military and I immediately moved back here. But I had been stationed here several times prior.
Gotcha.
So, but finally returning and retiring was 2015.
Gotcha. So you decided to come back here because when you were here before, you loved it here. Basically, sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved everything about San Antonio, especially from a military perspective, knowing that at one point I would be retiring. And to me, you got to look at cost of living, what's your health care going to look like, as well as the support of the military in the community. And San Antonio being Military City, USA, I couldn't think of a better place.
A better place, yeah.
Besides the weather, I love it.
Yeah, right. So you still talk to your family now, right? So everything is sort of, so after you signed up for the military and you were gone home, have you guys ever revisited you being a lesbian? And how does that, like, how are they finally accepting of it now?
Well, I mean, it's been, probably 4 decades since that time frame. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, times have changed, experiences of people have lived life, and society as a whole. So yes, I mean, everybody knows it's out there. They knew from the very first time. Yeah. And but yeah.
I'm sure your mom can't forget the first time she's ever found out that you're back for the different team, for the other team.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys laugh about it now, but I'm sure when it happened, it was a shock for everyone. But before we jump into, what you've done for the Just Us Lesbians in 2015, I wanted to obviously spend time about your career with the military, because you have gone from like the rank and file all the way to the very top, right? Like, I'm sure that our listeners would want to know that you retired at the very top. Like, how was that experience, and how, I mean, did your sexuality even come into play at that point? And in those 30 years that you were at the military, did you even have did you have someone in your life?
Because I went in at the age of 19, and at that time I was already experiencing some personal turmoils in my own life because the death of my grandmother. And just, in general, being away from home, a very shy, insecure, young lady. And also knowing that my lifestyle wasn't, conducive to the military rules.
Yeah.
And so pretty much, throughout my career, even to the bitter end, I, pretty much lived in hiding and did my best to conceal that side of my life, being a lesbian. I didn't openly act on it, never did anything that would bring that attention to me. Very just, little bit more reserved. Just did what I had to do in regards to, the duties in the military that were assigned to me, and just kept pressing on. I do know there were a lot of different things that occurred, like I mentioned earlier, witch hunts and things like that. I never experienced any of that, but I also kept an extremely low-key profile, never talked to anybody about it. So, I was safe regarding that. You asked about a couple relationships there were a few. That was it. Very, shortened the time frame, and that was it. Just being able to, have a couple friends along the way.
Sure.
Was nice. But that was, just friends.
So would you say that your primary goal was to just be basically to really be the best? I mean, what would you even say? Like a soldier or a careerist? Was your primary focus essentially is to be the best that you can be?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I hope that everybody goes out there and tries to follow that for themselves. For me, I would say that, I knew where I was in my hometown of Wichita, Kansas, and I was going nowhere fast. And it kind of scares me to think where I would have been if I hadn't joined the military.
Right.
I mean, we all have them stories where, you really probably don't want to revisit where you could have ended up. And so that's definitely like that for me. I knew that when I went into the military, I was going to do the best job that I could, to the best of my abilities. Everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses, and just,
sure,
do the best, and that's it. I was fortunate because of the military. They offered the tuition assistance, and while the criteria changed over the years, they eventually went to 100% tuition assistance. So, I was able to get my degrees in the military and just keep moving on, just doing my best. There were definitely hard knocks along
I bet.
the way, but,
So in those 30 years, you've traveled everywhere, I would imagine. So what was one of the best places you've been? And would you like to go back to that now that you're retired and you can pretty much, travel anywhere?
Yes, I would definitely say I was extremely fortunate because in the 30 years, I moved around 14 times.
Wow.
To different locations. And really, it was kind of like every 2 years I was gone. And, it was nice because I could go and reinvent myself and learn from my own personal
sure.
Lessons learned that, where I wanted to reshape and, like I said, reinvent myself. The travel was amazing. I got to go all over the world. I'd have to say, like a lot of people would say Europe. Europe was amazing. I'd love to go back there just because I enjoy, how they live over there, their culture, a lot of the old architecture that's still there, and they preserve it. So that was a great experience. And just see, how other people in different countries live.
But overall, you came back to San Antonio. Something about San Antonio is probably pretty special, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a great community. I mean, I believe that, there is a lot more lesbians here that have not came out, or they're in relationships where, there's really no need to have too much, socialization, where it's known that a lot of lesbians, they get in their relationships and kind of stick close to home. And, that's fine. That happens. Even, heterosexual, it happens. But just trying to, grow this community, and San Antonio's, I think, the right spot for it.
Yeah. So in 2015, you came back here, and that's where you've joined the Us Lesbians group. Is that how you found the group?
No, it was at the earlier part of COVID. I want to say it was either later, the latter half of 2019, and then the earlier part of 2020.
Is when you joined.
Is when I joined Us Lesbian meetup group. It was, the meetup platform. Read about the whole meetup thing in a magazine. I thought it was really, really neat. It was definitely going through my own changes regarding COVID, loneliness, depression.
Right. Yeah.
And I knew that I'm a social person and I love being around people, and I'd prefer really to spend as much time as I can with lesbians.
I see that. So you joined the group right before COVID, and then And then from there, you took over essentially, right? So there was a different organizer, and then she sort of bowed out and relinquished the throne. And so you've been actively the main organizer for the past 3 years. Is that right?
It's going on about maybe 3.5. Yeah. The way I understand how this meetup group, Just Us Lesbians, that somebody back in 2010 established it under the meetup platform. There's quite a few members, over 2,500 now.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, definitely amazing. And the group has gone through definitely a lot of transitions in regards to change out of leaderships and, of course, different activities, the volume of activities at different times, whether it's, once a month, several times a month, or once every couple months. And so, yes, the main organizer at that time basically said that they had some other priorities in their life that they needed to focus on, and they couldn't focus on this meetup group. And so I actually volunteered. I really wanted it. I knew that I believed, based on my experience and leadership in the military, that maybe I could make a difference and, get the group going. And
you have. Oh my gosh. I mean, like I told everyone that's been listening to this first episode of the podcast, this wouldn't have launched if not for the sponsorship of Just Us Lesbians. And Jackie definitely is the big part of that, and the big part of why the group has been really successful. I guess, so for everyone has not heard about the group and is interested in joining us, please, join us. We are pretty much available it's available in meetup.com, Just As Lesbians. You can also find us on social medias because we have very active Facebook accounts, Instagram and TikTok. And I would personally say that the Just As Lesbians group have changed my life completely, because I was a transplant to San Antonio 2 years ago now, if you could believe it. And a year and a half ago, I found Jackie, I found Just As Lesbians, and I've been a very active proponent in the group ever since. And I've been very, very honored that I am part of the group, very grateful that it has given me a starting point. Because when I first moved to San Antonio, did not know a soul. And if not for the group, I wouldn't have found this great community of lesbian women who truly, genuinely cares for one another. So what's your overall vision, and where do you see the group in a year or two? I know this year's closing out. We have 2024 literally knocking on our doors here, and we have another year in front of us. How do you envision the following year coming up with the group as a short term? I know you have long-term goals too, but as a short term, where do you see it? Just As Lesbians.
Yeah, with Just Us Lesbians, and I'd like to see us go, especially in 2024, is definitely increase membership, continue a lot of different activities, varied, that, interests all kinds of different hobbies or what the ladies are looking for, and to keep it that way, gathering, more local support from leadership. I'd like to get us a little bit more well known within the San Antonio community, as well as other organizations, a lot more volunteer support to community.
Right.
Involved with that, actually continuing like this podcast, increasing our social media presence online, as well as, there's a few other things I'm thinking about, reaching out to other lesbian communities throughout the United States, and informing them about us, and potentially launching, a meetup group in other cities. I know that we've been contacted by at least 2 other cities and groups, ladies in their groups that wanted to know about our group. They saw us online, wanted to know, what it takes to be successful, and lessons learned, and definitely, provide that to them, and, definitely want everyone to be successful in this endeavor. And, it's near and dear to my heart, lesbians, and, to keep focus on growing our community, friendships, have people to hang around with that understand you.
Absolutely. That's it's priceless. And I can tell you, somebody from Phoenix who has not heard of a lesbian group at all, and I was looking and craving for something like this. So it'd be truly wonderful if we can have a Just Us Lesbians chapter, in every statewide. And I know you and I have talked about that. Was one of the goals. Hopefully, way down the road and through this podcast, hopefully we can reach more than just the San Antonio lesbians, and hopefully all throughout the United States. Because if it's life-changing for me, and I know it is for you too, and that's why you've been the big support of the group, and you've been working hard on everything to make the group really successful. So I guess you've gone through a lot of successful things. You've launched a Just Us Lesbians group, very successful. You have had such a flourishing career in the military. Are you sort of like relaxing now on your goals? Do you have any more that you're trying to do, as you in the next few years? Like, what do you envision for yourself personally?
Yeah, I've always been one of these people that have to have goals. I have to have purpose, and have an idea where I want to go. So I would say, really focus on Just Us Lesbians, what we can do to grow it in a positive manner, increase membership, and, be the benchmark for a lesbian group across the United States. That's, to me, my long-term vision. I love saying that.
Yeah.
But just to, and meet new ladies in the community that are as fired up about having lesbians in their social circle, and just continue in this manner and really enrich lives. I mean, I've heard so many different stories about how the group has enriched lives of the ladies. It's changed their lives. They'll tell me, hey, I would have never had this group of friends if it wasn't for the group. I mean, I hear story after story of the positive impact that it's made on the ladies. And like I said, a big one for me is my mental health, keeping myself on track in that manner, as well as, having wonderful ladies like yourself, as part of my life. And all of these are great blessings and gifts.
So you're not stopping, basically. You're not relaxing, is what I'm hearing.
Let's just say not right now.
Not right now, which is good because, we need it. It's a resource for everyone. And, during this time that we have all this technology to connect us to others, you still need a special group like this that you guys can do something together outside of just texting or calling. It's different. It's different when you come out and achieve something together. The second time this year that we've shown up to the San Antonio Gay Pride Parade, and the visibility of having a lesbian group, it's beyond special because it's very uncommon. It's it's so unique. It's so special. So we're hoping that every year we come out there and be visible for everyone out there. And that's part of the reason why we launched this podcast as well, is to have another connection to the lesbian community, a resource that you can listen to, that if you're a newly lesbian out there and you don't know quite where to start, or you're still figuring yourself out, you'll hear stories about Jackie, and about myself and many other guests that's going to come forward to the show, that you'll hear their triumphs, failures, successes, all these things, right? And hope that you can connect to that in one way or another. So before we close out the show, do you have one or two things that you can share, that you can impart to our listeners?
I would just say, being thankful, having gratitude for where you're at in your life, doing the best job that you can, which is all we can do. I'm a big believer in service to other people. And I would just say, put your best foot forward and do what makes you happy, whether you're in the LGBT community or heterosexual. Do your best, enjoy life as it comes, and just keep pressing on.
Yeah. Well, we will keep on pressing on. That's what this show is all about. We hear stories like Jackie's. We hear advice from people like her. And there's going to be a whole bunch more. So we thank you for joining our very first episode. And we hope you join us on the next one. If you have any comments or any feedback or any stories you want to share with us, please hit us up on our socials. We're at the Taco Stand Podcast on Facebook and on Instagram. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. So thanks again, Jackie, for joining us today. And we can't wait to hear more about Just Us Lesbians group. I know that you're going to take the group in the next level, and hopefully we get more Just Us Lesbians group outside of San Antonio.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time and ownership of the podcast for the taco stand under Just Us Lesbians.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hey, thanks for listening to the first episode of the Taco Stand Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications. We'll see you on the next one.